Behavioral science says that an ideal retirement system not only caters for the tomorrow, but it caters for today. So by right, you must have account that people can access today so they do not feel depressed. Do I need to go to Along to borrow? Or do I need to borrow from my parents? Or do I need to go to get my credit card? It's even worse. Then my rates are high. Then it gets me into a vicious cycle.
BFM 89.9, good morning. I'm Roshan Kanasan and welcome to Enterprise Explores, the show where we help you navigate the ever-changing universe of business from the headlines to the bottom line. Now, over the weekend, EPF's new structure took effect, bringing into play a new third account known as Akaun Fleksibel. Today, Enterprise explores the strategy and rationale behind this move and much more with Balqais Yusoff, head of the Policy and Strategy Department at the EPF, or the Employees Provident Fund. Earlier this week, EPF members' accounts have been restructured from the previous 2 to 3 accounts, with contributions now being split 3 ways: 75% going to Akaun Persaraan, 15% into Akaun Sejahtera, and 10% into Akaun Fleksibel. So, just to recap, Account 1 will now be effectively known as Akaun Persaraan, Account 2 effectively known as Akaun Sejahtera, and the third account is Akaun Fleksibel. Now, on top of this, EPF members will have until August 31st to decide whether to opt in to restructure your existing balance and transfer an initial amount from Akaun Sejahtera into your Fleksibel account. This one-off initial transfer will be irreversible, so a lot of thought needs to be put into this before you make a decision. Effectively, if you've never withdrawn funds from EPF, this should restructure your savings to follow the new 75-15-10 ratio. So stay tuned as we dive into the rationale behind this move, what this says about EPF's evolution and role in our lives, and what we should know about these changes as well. Balqais, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for inviting the EPF to be on this show.
I think it's a really important voice to hear because, we're hearing lots of things from different perspectives and a lot of concerns over what this means for the retirement in this country. So I really do want to hear from the EPF itself about this. Now, let's start a little bit by getting the state of retirement systems here, because I think EPF's former Chief Strategy Officer, Nur Hussain, told CNA last year that only 4% of Malaysians would be able to afford retirement. And this was on the back of data that showed that by the end of 2022, 51 or about 52% of members under the age of 55 had less than 10,000 ringgit in their accounts. What can you tell us about the state of Malaysian retirement system today?
Okay, when we look at Malaysia's retirement system or any country's retirement system, it's facing tremendous pressures globally because of aging population and people are living longer. So can the retirement income that they have help them to finance their later years? So in terms of retirement system, when you want to assess a retirement system, you need to look at 3 things. Number 1 is coverage, right? Do we have enough people being covered by the retirement system? Number 2 is adequacy. Is the system paying enough for people to live and support their later years? Number 3, is the system sustainable, right? So I'm going to go through one by one, in terms of assessing any pension system. This is what the benchmarks are looking at. So in terms of coverage, for Malaysia's coverage, today we cover about 60% of the labour force. EPF is covering 50%, and 10% they are covered under the civil service pension. So that leaves 40% of people within the labour force not covered at all. Secondly, if you look at adult population, so while you have people in the labour force, participating in labour force, about 70% of adults of working age are participating in labour force. So leaving another 30% not working at all. So when you look at adults of working age, we are only covering 40% in Malaysia, leaving 60% not covered by any pension or retirement system at all. So that's on coverage. Number 2, when you look at adequacy. So adequacy is a global challenge. If you look at United States, UK, any country in the world, whether they are developed or not, adequacy will be a challenge for people as people live longer and longer. So in Malaysia, when we look at adequacy, of course, we have the basic savings, right? So EPF benchmarks itself, look at basic savings. How can you support yourself using this indicator called basic savings, which is 240,000 when you reach the age of 55, right? But adequate savings, what Encik Nur Hisham mentioned, is benchmarked against 2,500 ringgit per month times 12 times 20. So you need 600,000. So based on our system today, only 4% they are poised to meet that 600,000 in our system. But meeting basic savings, which is just giving you food to eat, that's about 33%. So basic savings, just very, very limited access, but adequate savings give you some comfort, like you can, have social engagement, you can, buy other things that you need apart from just food. So if we look at these numbers, definitely adequacy is a challenge. And even in the United States, only 4 out of 100 people are actually able to get this really comfortable. But of course, their numbers are a lot different, right? So, and then on the third issue, which is sustainability. Sustainability of a pension system is definitely an issue that is being grappled by all countries around the world. So, for instance, in Malaysia, we have a good system, which is EPF. We are under a defined contributions plan. It's very sustainable at the system level. Yes, we have issues at individual level, but at system level, we are very sustainable. The other issues facing the pension system is a defined benefit system. Defined benefit system, you guarantee the benefits. For instance, the civil service pension, they are guaranteed 60% of their last drawn salary. So now we face a lot of issues for the civil servants because we need to pay a lot of money under a pay as you go system, which is now 32 billion that needs to pay for just the civil servants who are in pensions. But if we don't solve this problem, we have a retirement issue crisis. But at the same time, Malaysia is in actually a good position because only a small proportion of the labour force is under the DB scheme. But globally, other countries are facing bigger issues because not only are their civil servants under the DB scheme, but their private sector, they are also under the DB scheme. So these are the three issues facing Malaysia's pension and retirement system, and EPF is a big part of the Malaysia's pension and retirement system, and we need to solve this. And I believe these are problems that can be solved because I think if you remember JFK's quote, he says that there are no problems of human destiny that are beyond human beings. So we can solve this problem. We just require political will and also the public and society at large wanting to do this together. And
thank you for the clarification around basic savings and adequate savings. I think, a lot of times when we talk about the 240,000 ringgit mark, people are like, oh, we just need 240,000 ringgit for retirement. No, that's not what EPF is saying. That's basic savings. It's just food for the month. Adequate savings is around 600,000 ringgit. Now, in a bid to get us there and improve the retirement situation, earlier this week, Akaun Fleksibel went live, and EPF members' accounts have now been restructured, as I mentioned earlier, from 2 accounts to 3. Account 1 effectively becoming Akaun Persaraan, Account 2 becoming Akaun Sejahtera, and of course the introduction of Akaun Fleksibel. There have been some mixed feelings, to say the least, about this move. So I think it's important to hear from the EPF. Why has the EPF undertaken this restructuring, and how does it support the larger agenda to get more Malaysians ready for retirement? Okay. Retirement is a very complicated thing because it's not happening today. It will happen sometime in the future for yourself. So for many people, we cannot associate with our future self. So let me give you some biases in retirement planning. Yeah. So there are a lot of biases in our lives, right? But I just want to give you some 5 biases that are important for us to understand in designing a good pension system or retirement system. So number 1 is present bias. As human beings, we put more priorities to our current needs compared to our future needs. Yeah, just to give you an example, they did this study. Let's say, Roshan, I ask you to imagine about yourself today, and then there's a lot of brain activities because you're imagining about yourself. Then I ask you to imagine about your colleague. You're not that excited because that's not about you. And then I also say that, Roshan, imagine yourself 20 years from now. It's the same level of brain activity that you have when you're imagining about someone else. So what does that say? You are not able to associate yourself today with your future self. Because of present bias, people will defer retirement. They will say that later, it's okay, I buat later, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is the issue of loss aversion. People hate losing more than they like winning. So when they are a part of their income is being taken away, they don't like that, right? So we need to manage this loss aversion when people want to do savings so that it gets equalized. So for instance, if I want to give you an example, if you win a reward, yeah, so you get 100 ringgit, but then you lose 100 ringgit in the same day because you lost your wallet. You're not going to be happy. For you to be neutralized, you need to win 200 ringgit to be neutralized. You'll only be happy if you win 3 times. So in the design, we need to make sure that the loss aversion is being tackled. If people don't feel that principle is addressed, they're not going to start saving as well. And bias number 3 will be status quo bias. So let's say if I were to ask you, if you're a freelancer,
do you want to come into a system? Voluntarily, today we know that only less than 10% of people in the gig worker that are subscribing with us, right? But in the UK, for instance, they do an auto enrollment. When you automatically enroll people, the number of people being in the pension plan is 80% because people, they don't like change in the near term, but over the long term, humanity progresses. We do embrace change. So in simple design, so if you do opt out, opt in, you need to consider what are the elements, and therefore you'll get there if the design is right. And then number 4 is optimism bias. Optimism bias is, I will say things like that, oh no, COVID-19, it will not hit me, it will hit somebody else. Or even I will say that in the future, when I'm old, my kids will take care of me, or I will have enough money. That issue of old age poverty is happening to someone else. We are overly optimistic about ourselves. Behavioral science says that people feel that they are going to be okay. But that's good. But sometimes it may not help us make good decisions. So for instance, they did a study when they asked, are you better than an average driver? 90% said that they are better. So who's average if 90% thinks they're average? So people always think that those things will not happen to them. And number 4 is scarcity mentality. Meaning to say that if I don't have money today, I will make poor decisions. So therefore, it's important to address your current needs so that you can start planning for the future. So I'll give you this example. In India, they did this research by global researchers. They went to India to this sugarcane farm. And then they did a study whether the farmers will perform better on an IQ test before and after harvest, right? So after harvest, they get more money. So actually, it was found that they are 14 notch higher in terms of IQ. So people have knowledge, but the situation will make them having scarcity that they make bad decisions. So for instance, if I don't have money, then I get very distressed, or even I give you too much workload. You don't make good decisions because you're overloaded. So when people are stressed, they don't make good decisions. So that's why in the design, we need to cater for all these 5 biases so that people make better decisions. So now, coming back to the design, you asked me the rationale. So taking into account all these biases, we've come up with an ideal, let's say at accumulation phase, we've come up with an ideal retirement system. Behavioral science says that an ideal retirement system not only caters for the tomorrow, but it caters for today. So by right, you must have account that people can access today so they do not feel depressed. Do I need to go to Along to borrow? Or do I need to borrow from my parents? Or do I need to go to get my credit card? It's even worse. Then my rates are high. Then it gets me into a vicious cycle. But now giving them access to this thing, it's in the UK, they call it a sidecar account. For retirement, the sidecar account is a new thinking, and this is what the EPF has done. So in the UK, what they do is that they create a sidecar account parallel to your retirement account. So any extra money, they will then, you will save first to build your emergency. Extra money, then they will put into the retirement account. But what EPF has done, we have gone through the in-plan model. In-plan model whereby the consolidated amount, then we redistribute accordingly. Many countries are experimenting this. Australia is experimenting and considering. New Zealand is considering. The US, they have a 401k that allows for this as well. So it's not something that's new, but it's relatively new in the space of retirement. So this is a new policy discussion that we need to be, in the forefront about. Yeah.
Earlier, we got into the state of retirement systems today in Malaysia, as well as some of the rationale behind the restructuring. Based on this restructuring and what we're seeing here, what can you tell us about what this means for EPF's evolution and its role in its members' lives?
I think the world around us is changing rapidly. There are more people are more working in the informal sector as well, and those are the developments enabled through digitalization and things like that. So EPF needs to evolve with the times. What worked in the past or what worked in the previous construct may not be relevant as we navigate the world with aging population, digitalization, climate crisis, and stuff like that, right? So basically, the EPFs has also looked at its strategy, and we are looking at having 2 distinct phases for retirement. So when you are working, productive, you accumulate, right? When you are no longer working, you need to decumulate, because you need to start thinking like this. Where is your income going to come from if you don't have a work anymore? So definitely we need to start shaping the thoughts and the mindset of, ourselves to start thinking about it that way. So basically, what is EPF's role? EPF's role is to provide income security in retirement. But in order to do that, we must help people accumulate. That's why we get the contributions, and we help grow that contributions into a reasonable sum, and we need to help people decumulate as well. That's what Malaysia is not doing that well right now, because in Malaysia, we only have 20% of the elderly receiving pensions, right? 15% from the civil servants who are receiving pensions today, and we have 4% or 5% from people who are hardcore poor, who are elderly, receiving a pension. So that leaves 80% of people not having some kind of regular income. So the EPF needs to do things and reform itself and look at how do we decumulate better. If I were to look at a defined contributions plan that I mentioned to you just now, only 5 countries whose national defined contributions are not giving a periodic payouts. We give in lump sum. But yes, it worked when life expectancy was in 50s, was 54 years old. But today, people are living 75, 80 years old. The system needs to evolve. But maybe whatever we'll do, we'll take into account current generation and the social contract that we have. So therefore, it will be with the new generation. So EPF needs to evolve. If I can sum it up, I need to have accumulation phase and decumulation phase. And that's how our account restructuring will start to form.
So as part of this restructuring, again, as we mentioned, we've got a new Akaun Fleksibel. Now, some of the worries that have come about this is that with this flexibility, that we might eventually see a lower dividend for the flexible account, or that overall it might impact EPF's returns, given that it comes with a liquidity, a more liquid portion. What can you tell us about this? Should EPF members be worried about this? Why not?
At the current announcement, we mentioned that the dividend rates will be the same across the board for all 3 accounts. And I think we are, exploring and looking at things, how people are withdrawing based on the current patterns and all things like that. But if I just can bring you to current and savings account. So today, current and savings account does not give as good as, fixed deposit. And then fixed deposit, the longer you lock up your money, you will get more. So, but EPF has not done that. So where do you get a very good, liquidity at that rate? So I will think that let's try to work out this, flexible account and Akaun Sejahtera, as well as the Akaun Pesara, and see how it pans out as we go along and study the behaviors and on how people withdraw and how people use it, because we want to technically start to work with Malaysians and say that, for your planning, you also need to think about short term, medium term, and long term. Essentially, these are the buckets that we have today, and people need to have mental accounting, because if people cannot relate to what the accounts mean, they will not, do the right things for the account. So for instance, if I were to call you subject 1, so it doesn't give any meaning to that. So before that, we were calling account 1 account 2. People cannot relate. What is account 1? What is account 2? But right now, if I call it Akaun Pesara, and it is for retirement. If we call it Akaun Sejahtera, it is meant for your life cycle needs, for your well-being, general well-being, that will help you later in your later years. And then if it's Akaun Fleksibel, we meant it for flexibility, because emergencies will be different for you and different for me, because I may have my tyre punctured and I don't have money to solve that. Then if I'm a Grab driver, how do I solve that? Where do I get the money? So it's circumstantial. We cannot say that, people will misuse their money, because they know what they need to do best compared to any one of us. But this one, we're giving some empowerment, but at the same time, we're taking care of your retirement well-being, because that's our mandate. So without taking or denying you from any choices that you can make for yourselves.
Now, I think this has been in the news, for at least a year, this term of a third account. Tell us a little bit about how long EPF has been working on this initiative, and what kind of analysis was done before giving this the green light.
We have thought about it for quite a long time. So this is a deliberate strategy. We started out doing research in 2020, whereby we asked people, what do you want from us, right? We do, and close to 90,000 people responded to the survey. It's a big survey, right? So a lot of people gave their inputs and thoughts, and 83% actually said that they want some flexibility, right? So we hear them, but at the same time, we also wanted to give you, a good retirement. So we need to balance the approach between the today and the tomorrow, like I mentioned to you, the status quo bias and all that. So it's all embedded into the design, so that people can plan better. So because if I don't settle my today, I will never start thinking about my tomorrow. So that's why we need to get people comfortable. Now my financial situation is being managed. I can start planning for my children's education. I can start planning for my retirement. But if I were to ask you to start thinking about retirement today, when I cannot even put food on the table, people will say that, look, I don't have time for all that. So that's why we want to help Malaysians manage their financials better. And of course, when people look at the savings, they need to start thinking what they need to do about it. Yeah.
Now, whether or not the dividend in time becomes lower or changes or anything like that, that still remains to be seen, see how it does. But one of the things that even if it was a lower dividend, I think some people were asking the question, why can't I opt out then, right? Let's say I memang don't want Akaun Fleksibel. I know I want to keep it for the long term. Why not let me opt out? Talk to us about the rationale of, making it compulsory and whether people have an avenue to, move money from the flexible account to the other accounts if they don't think they need it.
Okay, EPF, we are legislated, right? We have an act to govern what we do. So when we want to say that account for Roshan is different, account for someone else is different, it's kind of difficult, right? So we want to keep things simple. So that's why when we restructure the accounts, we're just saying that you have 2 accounts before, now you have 3 accounts, namely Akaun Persaraan, Akaun Sejahtera, and Akaun Fleksibel. So we do that across the board. But we do not deny you the opportunity to transfer between accounts. So for instance, right now, Akaun Persaraan 75. If you don't like your money, new money coming in from outside to go into Akaun Fleksibel, that 10%, you can make a recurring request from EPF and say that each month, I don't want to think about it, that 10% will go into my Akaun Persaraan. So what happens? Now your Akaun Persaraan become 85%. Or if you say that Akaun Persaraan is too locked up for me, I want Akaun Sejahtera. So you can take that 10% and put into your Akaun Sejahtera. Then you have your Akaun Sejahtera from 15% becoming 25%. So we are not denying anybody anything by doing this, but everybody that needs help, they get it. But those people that don't want it, they have options to then transfer a balance. But then you don't know. Your circumstances may change. 3 years from today, your husband or your spouse lost a job. And then you need some liquidity. Then you can just switch on. Then you have that. So we cannot assume that everybody's life cycle is the same. You need to trust people. And we are just asking to trust people with 10%. And I think when we trust people, they will give the trust back. Just to give you an example. During the pandemic withdrawals, we ask people why they withdraw. 85% withdraw, and they withdraw from the system. They did the right thing. About 45-50% they put food on the table because their significant other lost a job. But the other 40% they actually pay off their loans. So that they stabilize themselves. Then they are in a better footing to start their life and plan for their future. So we can trust people. But then of course there's 10-20% of people that will not do the right thing. But then when you map out, we are helping 80% of Malaysians. So why we want to look at a few people that take advantage of the situation and did something else. But even if someone buys a motorbike or an iPhone, you never know. I need an iPhone because now I want to become an e-hailing driver. I need that phone. Or I need to get a bike because now I become a rider. So these are all income opportunities, income generating opportunities. Should we deny people? We need to trust people, because if I have income, my income just nice for me to feed my kids and all that, but I don't have enough when suddenly my roof leaks. So are you saying that it's not important to fix the roof? The roof could collapse and you say no. Where do I get the money? So this is where we need to balance between the today and the tomorrow, and hence the design. And we are not denying anything because people are very polarized in their thought pattern. But I just want to share with you also, based on global evidence, when you do any policy, there will be reaction, right? You cannot expect zero reaction. So let's say we close off Jalan Tar and say that people must walk there. There will be noises, but over time people will get used to it. But now change management will come into play. Do you want to make the angst at level 8 or level 4 or level 2? So in the design, you need to take care of the different perspectives and the various diverse thought patterns that people have, because we cannot make everybody happy, right?
I want to just focus again on the recurring part, just to get that clear for everybody. So we will have an option to transfer that 10% over to either Akaun Persaraan or Akaun Sejahtera. I understand right now you got to go to the branch to do it. Will this become a more automated can I do it online in time?
Yeah, it's coming soon. In June or July, we'll be announcing that feature, and people can just do that. And I think there'll also be choices between splitting that 10% to 5-5, so people will be given options, right? Yeah, so it's easier when you want to switch switch on something rather than completely saying for Roshan, you never had your account flexible, and then suddenly you need it. I'm sorry, you had a one-time choice. Sorry, Roshan. You won't like that as well, right? So that's why we automatically create it for everybody, and then it's easier because status quo bias will then be settled, right? Then if you don't want it, you transfer. So we're not denying anyone in the system any choice that they don't want.
And I think that answers a lot of questions around this, right? So again, if ever the rate is not the same, people can move the money if they wanted to into a more locked-in account. But also you've got options here if you want to work it how you want to, what suits your life the best. Now, I think it's important also to kind of put a narrative around Akaun Fleksibel. Because, when I say Akaun Persaraan, I know retirement. I say Akaun Sejahtera, I know it's for my well-being, and we kind of know it's for things like mortgage, or sorry, not mortgage, down payment or education, things like that. What narrative, how should EPF members be thinking and treating their Akaun Fleksibel?
Akaun Fleksibel actually is meant for emergencies, but you determine your emergencies. Like I said, punctured tyre, roof leaking, so who's to say that your emergency is not mine, and therefore we allow that flexibility. The reason why we didn't call it an emergency account, then every month for some people or every day is an emergency. So we do not want to also dilute the meaning. So we call it flexible because you determine your emergency. But what I want to impress upon everyone is that for emergencies, I think under financial planning, we need to have 6 months of emergency fund. So we want people to build that resilience, build that emergency fund. And if you don't need it, don't use it. But we also want to say that it's important with the naming, right? So that, let's say, when I said mental accounting just now, also I want to share that, let's say Roshan wants to go for holiday. So it's easier for you to have this bucket for holiday, this bucket for education for your loved ones, this bucket for your long term. Because if you don't have that bucket, you mix it and then you will reuse it. So that's why we restructure the accounts in 3 buckets: flexible, Sejahtera, and Persaraan, to also share with you that we need to start thinking about short-term planning, medium-term planning, and your long-term planning. So we hope that over time, this become more ingrained in our DNA, and we make better decisions, we make better financial planning, because like I mentioned just now, when people are depressed, they are down, they are not well, they don't make good decisions. So now let's start everybody on a good place, and then they will start thinking about their future better.
Now, a key thing that I think maybe not enough people are focusing on is the fact that the artist formerly known as Account 1, Akaun Persaraan, today has gone from 70 to 75% of monthly contributions, which effectively means that we've got less funds available for non-retirement needs like housing, although there is a lot more flexibility. Why the increase in Account 1 contributions, and how does this fit back to all the study that was done and the dynamics we talked about earlier, right? Those biases.
The increase to 75 is a deliberate, strategy, because we want people to accelerate their retirement savings accumulation. So with that 5%, it will help EPF today, for members' perspective, 33% of our active members meeting basic savings to 65% or more people meeting basic savings in just a space of 8-10 years. So we are going to get that outcome. So the more important thing is to think of the bigger outcome, which is our mandate, which is retirement. But we need to also support the non-retirement or pre-retirement, because if I don't have shelter over my head, I don't have a place to live. If I'm going to live long, I don't have kids. So that's why globally, even other countries are mulling about doing what Malaysia has been doing, because it has been proven to be successful on the accumulation side. So that 5% will really help us accelerate the basic savings achievements, and definitely the adequate savings is going to come together. For anything that is talking about retirement, is a long-term view. You cannot expect that if I do something today, you will see the results tomorrow. It is a deliberate attempt for us to do this, and in 10 years you will start to see the benefits. Similarly with population aging, you don't see people aging today, kerepot tomorrow, right? So people are you're going to feel the impact of having lesser children in the next 10-15 years. So the planning to look at all that must start from now. Malaysia has still a good labor force, and adult of working age. We call it a demographic dividend. Once you lose a demographic dividend, any change that you're going to do is going to not create any impact at all. So you need to start thinking about all of this today and now, because in 10 years, 20 years down the road, we are going to see the effect of this, and more people have savings, and and they are poised to even meet adequate savings.
33% to 65% in the next 8 to 10 years in terms of EPF members meeting basic savings. That's quite a material move in terms of how that 5% shift in monthly contributions is doing. So it's quite a material move. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Any other points to talk about when it comes to this move?
That's because compounding. Compounding takes effect, but compounding takes time. So for instance, I'll just give you an example, right? So if let's say you have individual A saving 100 ringgit every month for 40 years from the age of 20 to 60. So the capital is 48,000. But what happens at age 60? Because of compounding effect, I will get 150,000. Okay, that's individual A. Now let's take individual B. Start a bit later at 40. Save until 60 but put 200. Capital the same, 48,000. Actually, when compounding, because you start late, it's only 81,000 I will have. But now let's take individual C. Individual C, start early at 20, put more early, 200 ringgit per month until 40. Capital is still 48,000. You know how much this person will have? 230,000. You can see that compounding over time will help you, but starting early will help. So even if I put 200 ringgit later and I put 200 ringgit now, it gives you a whole different. But you see, the individual C and A, I start early but I put 100 ringgit, I still will be short of the person C that starts early and stop but put more early. So when you talk about compounding, it takes time to take effect. So that's why in 10 years EPF would have generated the returns, the contributions are there, and we can more than double your whatever that you put in a space of 10 years, and new contributions coming in. But over 40, 50 years, we can give you that replacement rate that is way above what you put in. Because when you talk about 6% returns on annual basis, and we compound, we pay on daily rest, we compound over years, in 70 years, that number is a staggering, 12 times more than what
It's a lot, right? And compounding. And I think one thing anyone should do right now is just open up your phone, and as long as you're not driving, of course, is open up your phone and open up a investing calculator and just do that. Do a 40-year, 30-year, 40-year period, and you'll see that towards the later part of that curve, it really starts to get quite steep. And that shows you, and usually it's around the 20-year mark where you start to really see that compounding benefit. So I'd really encourage people to go and do that, to really kind of see that potential there. Now, with that change, right, we're seeing 70% to 75% for Akaun Persaraan. We're now also seeing that effectively the remaining part has gone from 30% to 25%. And instead of splitting it, 15%, 10%, why was this strategy done, right? Why not take that 5% and use it to account 2 and raise that to 20%, for example, instead of reducing that account Sejahtera? Is there a particular reason behind the shift there?
Yes. I talked about the bias on loss aversion. People hate losing more than they like winning. So for us to shift 5%, for you to be neutralized, you need to get 10%. If I give you 5% there, you're not going to be happy. But, based on evidence. So for us, it's a trade-off. We take 5% into your retirement pot, but it's for you. It's not for us, because at the end of the day, we are just a custodian of your retirement savings. EPF is a large institution, but we need to care about what happens to our members, right? So now we give you that 10%. So you're neutralized. But then you still have the opportunity to do whatever you want with that 10%. So if you want to do the better thing, put it into Akaun Sejahtera. Or you want to do the even better thing, put it into Akaun Persaraan for your retirement. So that's why the design is like that. So, but you don't look at it from 30% becoming 15. Technically, it's just 30% to 25, because you can just add up whatever. I want to buy a house. Okay, I can still take from Akaun Sejahtera, but I can add up my 10% from Akaun Fleksibel to top up. So it's okay, right? So that's how we've designed it in such a way that will cater for the broader base. Because like I mentioned, I cannot make everybody happy. There's always trade-offs in the decisions. And this is a participative exercise, right? Then people give inputs and we try to address as broad-based group as much as we can. But as I mentioned before, we take into account the views of multiple stakeholder groups. In fact, 83% wanted all this. only 17% don't want it. But when you put on the background of 10, 15 million people, that 17% is a lot, right? But let's look at the bigger picture.
Now, as part of the restructuring, EPF members will have the option to make a one-time irreversible transfer of part of their savings balance from Akaun Sejahtera, formerly Akaun 2, into the new Akaun Fleksibel. This is an opt-in decision, and members will have just, I think, around 3+ months to make this decision. From EPF's perspective, what do members need to consider before opting in for this? Because it's not a simple yes or no kind of decision.
So first thing, maybe the best thing to do is do not rush, right? Simply because it benefits you if you don't rush. If you don't rush, as time progresses, you will also be able to assess your situation better, right? For you to make informed decision rather than rushing. But number two, if you delay it, more money will come into Akaun Sejahtera. So potentially you have more money by August, then you would have money in May to transfer into your flexible account. If you want more, delay it a bit, so you'll get more. But then, of course, the thing is to assess your own situation. Do I really need it? Do I have already the emergency funds, which is 6 months of my monthly income? If I do have it, maybe you don't need to consider this. Just leave it where it is, and then just let new money come in, and then you decide what you want to do with the new money, because our system will later allow you to switch on, switch off whenever you need it. So your circumstances will be able to be addressed at the time of need, because I can tell EPF and say that do this recurring 10% always go into Akaun Persaraan, but my circumstance changed and I said now I'm buying a house, so I need to make monthly payments and I need that money. So say that now new money put in back into that 10%, which is why we did this, design it this way, because we are thinking long term. We are making sure that everyone's needs and the scheme, the design is flexible to cater for the diverse stakeholders that we have, because everybody is different. I cannot say that if I'm a gig worker, I'm the same like you. So that's why, but then the choices are up to you within certain reasonable parameters, because I also cannot give all the money for retirement up to people to use as they wish, right? So we need to prepare for this aging population, for your own life expectancy, because I want to also impress people out there. Once you reach the age of 60, your life expectancy is not 75. Life expectancy at 75 is life expectancy at birth. But when you reach the age of 60, you have a higher probability to live until 90, but we are looking at 20 years longer. So now, if you already attain the age of 60, you will live until 80 at minimum.
Now, as we come to the end of this conversation, Balqais, maybe give us a sense give us some general advice when it comes to retirement, when it comes to retirement planning, how we should use the new strategy. Just anything, just some closing comments here.
Okay, maybe a few things. I think, as mentioned, because of compounding effect, we like people to start early. The earlier you start, I've shown you the example just now. For instance, someone, let's say, if I'm in my 50s, I want to get to 1 million, I have to put 7,000 ringgit a month. But if I'm in my 20s, I just put 600 ringgit per month. So start early, because you can get to your retirement goals better. Number two, defer withdrawals. If you defer withdrawals by 5 years, the same amount, you don't put anything, you already increase your savings by 40%. If you defer by 10 years, that same amount that you don't put any money, it increases by 90%. So defer withdrawals, or you can work longer, or you can combine all of those things. But for those people who are favoring informal work, or you either by choice and all that, please subscribe to our iSaraan. Today, the government gives incentive of 500 ringgit or 15% of whatever you put in per year, and we have a lifetime limit of 5,000. So please take advantage of that. The more you take advantage of that, so in a year, if EPF gives 5 or 6%, you're getting like 21% guaranteed, dividends. That is compounding. Can you imagine what that does in 10 years? So that's like exponential, I'm telling you. So I hope that people are going to do that. Open the accounts for your children, because the earlier they start, they are going to have this better retirement future for themselves.
Balqais, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
welcome. Thank you so much, Roshan, for having us.
Folks, I've been speaking with Balqais Yusoff, Head of Policy and Strategy at the EPF, the Employees Provident Fund. And this has been Enterprise Explores, the show where we help you navigate the ever-changing universe of business from the headlines to the bottom line. If you missed any part of this conversation, you can catch the podcast on the website at bfm.my or download the BFM app. Our shows are also available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just look for Enterprise Explores. Looking ahead, we've got the Breakfast Grill replay happening after the 1 p.m. news bulletin. I'm Roshan Kannison. Keep it here to BFM 89.9, the business station.